Well, welcome and God bless. Today the topic is triple threat trifecta, faith, hope, and love. Now today we're going to cover three individual power words, each designed to reset a mind and a life, but when bound together, they're world-changing. Now understanding how to become these words makes you a triple threat. Now, being called a triple threat is actually a compliment. A triple threat is a person who's highly adept at three fields of activity. A performer who's called a triple threat can sing, dance, and act. You know, a football player who's a triple threat can run, kick, and throw. A triple threat in basketball is a player that can shoot, dribble, and pass. And a girl is a triple threat if she has looks, brains, and a great personality. Just like all you ladies. So when you master the ability to walk in love, believing, and hope, you too become a triple threat. Now as you integrate faith and hope and love into your repertoire of skills, you will be an unstoppable force in life, in business, in relationships, plus you're going to be pretty cool to be around. So today, we will see how each of us should strive to be a triple threat, to all that's wrong in this world and a triple blessing to all that's right. Today we put on faith, love, and hope. Now, triple repetition. Now, there are many tripled concepts that are repeated throughout the Bible and in life. You know, themes like doctrine, reproof, and correction, body, soul, and spirit, made, formed, and created, the way, the truth, and life. They're all triple good stuff. You see, not to mention earth, wind, and fire. You know, Larry, Moe, and Curly, chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, tic-tac-toe, the Nina, Pinta, Santa Maria, and the old red, white, and blue. A lot of good stuff comes in threes. Now the number 3 usually signifies completeness or finality. It suggests a beginning, middle, and end. And some biblical scholars say that when 3 things are repeated, it usually means that something significant is about to happen. Now for example, remember the story about Elijah's sacrifice with the prophets of Baal, you know, and to show the power of the one true God, Elijah went against 850 prophets of Baal. And the challenge he threw out was to summon their God to light a fire and to burn the sacrifice. So whichever God answered with fire was going to be the true God. Well, the evil prophets tried all day. You know, they screamed, they chanted, they cut themselves, they jumped up and down on the altar and tore it to pieces. They were frustrated because their God never answered with fire. Well, Elijah piled back up, you know, all the wood and placed a sacrifice on it, and then he told them to dig a trench around it. And they go, okay. And he said, now fill it with water. Drench all that wood. They go, okay. They did that. He goes, do it a second time. So they filled it up with water again and drenched the wood. He says, now do it a third time. And they're like, ha ha ha, you know, this ain't going to happen for him. Well, the wood was saturated. It was soaked. You see, but Elijah prayed and God sent a fire from heaven which was so hot it fell and burnt up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the soil, plus it licked up all the water in the trench. 3 dousings led to something significant. That's in 1 Kings 18. Now what about Jonah being crushed and drowned inside the belly of the whale 3 days and 3 nights? But was raised from the dead the moment the whale spit him out onto dry land? I would say that's kind of significant. What about the 3 times Jesus prophesied that Peter would deny him? Okay. Now we all know, most of us know that on 2 separate occasions, 2 separate times, Peter 3 times in succession denied that he knew Jesus during Jesus' torture. Bullinger's Appendix 160 will show you that. Now, after Jesus' death and resurrection, Peter became Jesus' most faithful apostle for a few years. Peter's triple denial, done twice, is pretty significant. Now, Jesus was buried for 3 days and 3 nights, right? You see? And then something significant happened after that. Do you know what that is? The resurrection. You see, Jesus was raised from the dead after 3 days of being dead and buried. Now, that is most amazing, if I don't say so myself. Now, a series of 3 indicates both completeness as well as pointing the way to an expectation of something greater. The repetition of 3 typically adds special emphasis. And today, we deal with 3 different sets of the same 3 words. And the words are so big, they're so powerful on their own that each can alone change lives. But when they're used as a group, they will not just transform a life, they'll change the world. And actually, when faith, hope, and love are used in sequence, they can not only change your world now, but they'll transform your eternity. The number 3 is a pretty big number. Faith, hope, and love make you a triple threat. Now, the trifecta of teamwork. Now, faith, hope, and love are the trifecta of teamwork, the triple crown of collaboration, the trio of tremendous. The Greek words pistis, agape, and elpis are 3 inseparable friends. That's faith, hope, love, or faith, love, and hope. And pistis is faith or belief. Now, faith is a conviction based on what we've heard about, but we've never yet seen. You see, this word faith, it covers 2 vastly different mindsets. On one hand, faith is a belief system that's so deeply ingrained that it pops out of our mouth and stirs us to action. You ever heard somebody who talk politics? You ever try to shut them up? Good luck. You see, much like politics, which is in effect a religion, that's faith. It's faith. It'll rise to the surface and it's going to come out when you least expect it. You see, faith can also be translated believing. Now, believing is the same devout conviction, but it's always given in the context of doing or giving something, or getting or giving something. Like Mark 11:23 and 24 says, "For verily I say unto you, that whosoever shall say to this mountain, Be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those things which he saith shall come to pass, he shall have whatsoever he saith. Therefore I say unto you, what things soever ye desire, when you pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall," what? "Have them." You shall have them if you believe. Now that's a pretty big fat claim, wouldn't you say? That is not having faith in God, as it says in verse 22. Young's literal translation says that Jesus told us to have the faith of God. Now chew on that one for just a minute. Jesus told us to have the faith of God. See, we're told to have faith in as well as the believing of God. Now, how big can God believe? Spoiler alert, God created the heavens and the earth. What can you do? What could we do? And just to add a thought to this is, Jesus walked on the water. Peter walked on the water. People were raised from the dead. Look at the miracles that happened through the Bible. The healings, the raisings from the dead. I mean, the splitting of seas. What can you do? Job lost everything. did he not? Job lost everything, 10 kids and all his money, yet he got back double that he had the first time. But if you keep reading in that chapter, it says that his friends all brought him a piece of gold. You see, they all helped him get started. Now that's love, which we'll get to in just a minute. You see, we're to have faith in as well as the believing of God. You see, believing moves our limits, and actually removes our limits. It removes our limits. As the song says, we got to have faith, faith, faith. Baby. Now the next word, agape, you see, or its Aramaic equivalent, hav. It's spelled C-H-A-V with a silent C. Okay, hav. And it's a love in its fullest conceivable form. It's the full force of love. The full force of love. You see, it's an unconditional love that doesn't require reciprocation. It doesn't require reciprocation. It's so big. See, agape or hav is a torrent of love that's so powerful, so dominant, that it flows out one way like a mighty river, but never with the requirement that the love is to be returned. When the gift of love is returned, it changes names to another type of love. It's no longer agape. It's no longer hav. Because we say agape is the love of God. Okay. That's cool. But what does that mean to the Greeks? What did it mean to these people? Well, these were Aramaic-speaking peoples who wrote this stuff. They didn't use the word agape. They didn't use phileo. They didn't use eros. They didn't use Philadelphia or phileo. You see, they didn't use that. They used hav. That meant a love that goes one way, and I'll tell you what the other word is in just a minute. Basically, it's either a love that goes out or it's a love that goes out and comes back to you. It's a completed cycle. But this is not talking about the completed cycle. This is being so big, so confident in who you are that you can give out that love, not caring if it's ever given back. God so loved the world. God so loved the world was the word agape or hav. You see, because the world didn't love him back. In the Bible where it talks about the world, is it in a good sense, typically? No, the things of the world? No, it's not. You see, the world doesn't love God back, but he loves the world. He so loved that he gave his son. That's John 3:16. That is totally unconditional love. That's big love, folks. To love someone who will never love us back is not easy. The type of love that's returned is we would call brotherly love. Hav is a love that flows, or agape, the love that flows from the person, but it's not a completed cycle. It's not a completed circuit. You see, for love to be completed, it must be returned. And that's a Hebrew or Aramaic word. It's racham, R-A-C-H-A-M, or what we may call brotherly love. But it's a completed love. You've given it out and you get it back. And that's what we like. That's the kind of love we all like, but that's not the kind of love we're talking about in this teaching. Now, last week I saw two young ladies with their school backpacks on. And they were standing on the street in front of my house. And my wife and I, we pulled out of our driveway and I asked Josephine, I said, what are those young girls doing standing there? And, and she looked at me like the slow child that I am. And she goes, those girls want those boys playing basketball down the street, to notice them. And I said with great insight, oh. Guess the difference between a girl and a guy, maybe. You see, from what I could see, the girl's love wasn't even being noticed by the boys. You see, what would have happened if just one of those boys had have just blown those girls a little kiss? They would have been on cloud 9. Their love would have been returned. But it wasn't. Those boys didn't even know that they existed. You see, the love we're talking about today is a love so big we can give it expecting nothing in return. Now, elpis, E-L-P-I-S, is the Greek word for hope. Now, hope is always translated a confident expectation or an expectation of something future. You guys get the concept. You see, we confidently expect it to happen. We just know it's going to happen someday. Like I was talking a couple of weeks ago about my friend Tom when I was talking to him. I said, look, I know you want to be healed now, but even if you don't get healed in this life, you will be healed someday. That's hope. He nodded. You see, he got it. He understood. We're all going to be healed someday. You see, we're all going to get up someday. You see, it's going to happen someday. There are no maybes. That's hope. It's going to happen. You know, when we give someone hope, time disappears and their future is brought into clear view. When we give someone hope, time disappears and their future is brought into clear view. Now, hope is not just waiting out our life until Christ comes back. Hope is actually fairly aggressive, forward-thinking, ever-positive. It's an ever-positive trait that we each can master. Hope directs our belief system. Hope sets the mind straight. Hope is the reset button of our soul. Hope helps us hang on so we can buckle down and enjoy the journey. Hope is an anchor of the soul. Our soul is our minds, our hearts, our love, our believing. Right? See how this is all tied together? Now remember, these three words, hope, faith, and believing, are going to be used 3 times by the Apostle Paul. It's only 3 times in the whole Bible. And we're going to cover each of these in just a moment. You see, the concept of hope being an anchor of the soul should get us to lean forward and listen a little bit. Because that very same verse said that it says that hope takes us behind the curtain where God becomes more tangible. And I'll show you in just a second. Let's see how this might help us in goal setting or getting deliverance, the deliverance we've been looking for. Whatever it is, you fill in the blank. Now, I do want to add here that all believing starts with hope. Did you know that? All believing starts with hope. It's when you act toward that hope, now it's believing. When you do something about it, that's believing. But hope, it's that picture of what you want. That boat, that car, that house, that love, whatever it is, that health, whatever. Hebrews 6:19 from the NLT. This hope is a strong and trustworthy anchor for our souls. It leads us through the curtain into God's inner sanctuary. Hope leads us boldly behind the separating curtain and into the arms of a God who loves us. Hope allows us to see the unseen that's waiting for us to see. Can God already see what we're going to need down the road? Yeah. Does God have all the time in the world to make that happen? Yes. So one thing is hope. Now, faith is what helps you get there, which we talked about a few minutes ago. See, hope allows us to see the unseen that's waiting for us to see. Hope is called the anchor of our souls. What does that mean? What does an anchor do? You know, what was Paul, by way of Paul, what was God, via Paul trying to communicate to the early Christians and to us? Well, most of us know that an anchor has two basic functions. Maybe you know about one, okay? And you got to remember, first off, that every single person on earth at the time this was written, not this teaching, but the Bible, lived near water. Everybody lived near water. They had to. Water was your highway. Water was your life. Water held your food. Water. You need water. You see, everybody knew that. Everybody saw fishing vessels. Everybody. Probably every family had one or been out on one. Everybody knew what an anchor did. And they do two basic things. Two basic things is what an anchor does. One, it holds that ship or that boat in place. We know that. An anchor's dropped from the boat and digs into the seabed or the riverbed or the lake bed, and it keeps that vessel from drifting due to wind or current. If you've ever been on a lake and forgot to drop anchor, you notice how you're a mile away when you finally look up from fishing or whatever. You're a long way. It's like, what? How come you didn't put the anchor down? Well, how come you didn't put the anchor down? How come you didn't put the anchor down? You see? You're a long way. Now you got a long way to come back. You see? I mean, you may be miles away before you know it if the wind's blowing or the current's strong. So that anchor holds it in place. So hope is your anchor. It'll hold you in place when the winds of life blow. It holds you in place when the currents of life try to move you a direction you don't want to go. And two, the second use of an anchor is a nautical technique called kedging. K-E-D-G-I-N-G. Kedging. And you may not know this unless you're accustomed to sailing. But kedging is still used and was used to free a boat that's stuck on a shoal or a sandbar. And what would happen is, if you got that boat stuck on that sandbar, you see, then you would go out to the water side of that boat and you take your anchor and you'd throw that anchor, if you could throw it, a small boat, and it would dig into the riverbed or the seabed, and then you would pull that rope and it would just pull that boat off of that sandbar. That's called kedging. Big boats do it. In the War of 1812, one American vessel got away because of kedging. The wind had stopped. The sails were flat. There was 3 strong British ships, just out of firing distance. So the captain of this one ship, he told them to row the anchor out because they couldn't carry it. And they rowed it out like 400 feet, dropped it, and then they used the winches and they pulled it. And they did this for like 3 days. And then the British could not figure out how their ship was moving, and the British ships were stuck. By the time they did, the winds filled the sails and they took off and they were safe. But a big ship can use kedging too, to release itself from a shoal or a sandbar, or if you're a sailing ship, it could be to get away. So those are the 2 uses. It's an anchor to hold you in place, or kedging to get you unstuck. Everybody knew that. It's sort of like, you ever been stuck in a snowbank and somebody came by and threw a tow strap to you and pulled your car out, or maybe you helped that? Well, it's sort of the same thing. That's like kedging, okay? It's pulling you loose. You see, kedging breaks you free from whatever's stopping you from moving. See, an anchor keeps you from moving, and kedging gets you moving. Now, holding you in place is hope. Breaking you free is believing. And taking the time to do it for somebody else is love. What holds you in place is hope. What breaks you free is believing, and taking the time to live bigger than yourself and help somebody else is love. Faith, hope, and love each play off each other, and they all need each other. These 3 words are the trifecta of teamwork. Now the triple threat: faith, hope, love. Now we're going to read 3 verses in chronological order. This is the order in which they were originally written by Paul. And this will prove to be significant. And then I'm going to explain and define how we can each employ the power of each word to become a triple threat as we enjoy them together. So watch the order of these three words change as Paul and the body of believers of that day changed. The order of these words is going to change in importance as situations change. And they'll change in your life just the same. Some days hope is the most important thing. Some days faith or believing is the most important. And some days it's love is the most important. We'll find out that love's always the most important, but we'll get to that in a minute. So these letters are written by Paul to the early church maybe 12 years after the original outpouring of Holy Spirit on the day of Pentecost. And these three terms are the first things that God communicated to him, and he was supposed to communicate to the early Christians. So 1 Thessalonians chapter 1, and we're going to read 2 through 5, and I'm going to read from the Message because I can. Okay? Now, every time we think of you, we thank God for you. Day and night you're in our prayers as we call to mind your work of faith, your labor of love, and your patience of hope in following our Master Jesus Christ before God our Father. It is clear to us, friends, that God not only loves you very much, but also has put His hand on you for something special. When the message we preach came to you, it wasn't just in words. Something happened to you. The Holy Spirit put steel in your convictions. Now, 52 to 53 AD, faith, love, and lastly hope were described in this order. And this was the very first time Paul communicated this three-tiered concept to the early Christians in writing. They needed something to hang on to at that time. Jesus had been dead and gone for over a decade now, and people were beginning to lose faith. They were beginning to lose their faith. They're losing their desire to love, and worst of all, they were beginning to lose hope. Now, I've known devout Christians who, when disillusioned with their faith, just quit. Just quit. I knew a seminary-trained minister who got so hurt by her church that she literally threw her Bible away, tossed her study materials, and ridded herself of anything that reminded her of Christianity. Paul was facing a similar situation. You know, I have a friend, Anna Klein, who was so disillusioned with Christianity after a gay sex drug scandal broke out in his church with his pastor, you know, who was the founder of a global ministry, that my friend converted to Judaism. I was invited to his wife's bat mitzvah, you know, at the local temple he goes to. Oy vey. You see? Now, you know, how do you do that? Now, the cool thing about that is, and he doesn't really understand this, is once you're a Christian, you're always a Christian, no matter what you call yourself. It's worse than the mafia, folks. You know, you can get in, but you cannot get out. You're born again. You're born again. You know, and that's it. It's incorruptible seed. It'll never end. You're going to be raised from the dead with all the Christians, even if you hate Christians. You see? I once had a man call me up who was coordinating a local fellowship, one of the few that I oversaw, and he told me that he was quitting. I quit. And I said, why, man? Why are you quitting? We need you. And, you know, and he talked about the dualistic leadership of the ministry, or he wondered how a minister could have two kind of lives, one hidden and one exposed, you know, one that he showed. And so it sort of messed his head up. And so I asked him what he's going to do, and he said, I'm going to get drunk, get laid, and build Harleys. I guess he was just born to be wild, you know. Yeah, at least he was honest, right? Oh yeah, somebody just said it was his trifecta. Get drunk, get laid, and build Harleys. You see, these three people lost faith. They lost hope. They lost their love for the group that they were with because of others. They waited for the love to come back to them that they were giving out. That's going to be a lot of people's swan song. If you're waiting for that, folks, you may wait way too long in your church, in your fellowship, in your networking group, in your family. You see, this is what Paul was trying to rectify with faith, love, and hope in that order. Faith, love, and hope. Now, it's really hard to keep focused and to keep doing something year after year if you don't see others living the same way. It's really hard to do. See, Paul is trying to teach the early Christians how to get consistent results no matter what is going on around them. Now watch how Paul once again pairs these three powerful words together. He uses them once again in the same order and in the same letter to 1 Thessalonians, you see, but it's in a different context now. You see, hope is the final point both times in 1 Thessalonians. So, chapter 5, verse 6 through 8, I'm going to read it from the Phillips, which you didn't even know there was. Let us then never fall into the sleep that stupefies the rest of the world. Let us keep awake with our wits about us. Night is the time for sleep, and the time when men get drunk. But we men of the daylight should be alert, with faith and love as our breastplate, and the hope of our salvation as our helmet. Now see, God inspires Paul to show that these three concepts can work in any context. And the second use of these three words, faith, love, and hope, surround the context of death, if you read the prior chapter. And like I said before, we're all going to deal with death. Nobody gets out of this life alive. Nobody we love, and not us. We're all going to deal with death. And I have people all the time, I don't like it. I can't deal with it. Well, you have to deal with it. You're going to deal with it. Here's how you deal with it. Paul was using a common daily sight to teach a simple lesson. Now, I'll review this in just a minute, what he was talking about. All the believers knew about the dreaded Roman soldier. Rome had conquered Israel 100 years earlier and dominated the Mediterranean for the better part of that 100 years. Rome owned Israel for a reason. The reason was the discipline of the Roman soldier. The Roman soldiers were ultra prepared, constantly training, and always ready for battle in their full military gear. Roman foot soldiers always had their gear on. The remote context of these three words shows us how to protect our hearts and how to keep our heads together when people we love and respect begin to die. If you've ever had someone who is very close to you die, then you'll know the heartache, the faith-quenching anguish that results. The question people always ask themselves when somebody dies near them or when they're going through a horrendous time and they wonder if they're going to die is, why did God allow this to happen to me? Why is this happening to me? We feel unloved. We feel forgotten. We feel forsaken. This is why Paul combines faith and love. Faith and love are inseparable. They're inseparable. They cannot be separated. Faith and love. Believing in love cannot be separated. You see, we protect our hearts with faith and love because we miss them deeply. We miss those people deeply, but we still keep our heads together with hope. Remember the helmet of salvation, which is hope? You know, while we wait for the Lord to appear, we too must learn to live in the light when darkness is all around. Did you notice how faith and love are combined in one single concept, a breastplate? It says the breastplate of faith and love, the breastplate. Two words make one thing. Okay? Faith and love are like custom-made, military-grade breastplates, forge welded together. Now, in the old days, when two types of metal needed to be welded together, they were both heated up, cherry red, cherry red, and then they were hammered together until they became one. Until they became one. Here, love and faith are forge welded together into one single breastplate. Everybody knew how those things were made. They were welded, hammered into form, stretched, galvanized, and beautifully shaped into perfectly well-fitting, custom pieces of armor to protect our hearts. To protect our hearts. No two were alike. Each soldier would custom form his body armor to move with his body in battle, not to mention style points. If it looked exceptionally good or cool. You see, faith and love are our breastplate. Now, hope is something different. He separated and segregated hope from love and faith. Why? Hope is something totally different. I was just thinking how in the fruit of the Spirit doesn't have hope. Hope isn't listed in the fruit of the Spirit. Isn't that crazy? It's such an important concept, yet it's left out. I wonder why. Hope's something different. Hope is something different. Without hope, we lose heart. Without hope, you lose heart. Without hope, we lose faith. Without hope, we lose believing. We have no believing. The verse says, hope of our salvation as our helmet. Hope protects our heads, our brains. That's what a helmet stands for. Get hit in the head, rather have a helmet on. Are you bicycle riders and motorcycle riders? If you fell off that, I knew a guy one time that fell off, his bike just hit a rock and it tipped over and his head hit a rock and it knocked him out. And his helmet was shattered into 100 pieces, but he lived. That would have been his head. Well, this is a military helmet. Okay. Most military men and women wear helmets when they go into battle. You see, hope protects our heads, our brains. That's what the helmet stands for. Hope is salvation. Hope is our helmet. The word salvation means a safe place. A safe place. It means to be preserved or rescued from danger. It means health and safety. That helmet of salvation, that hope, keeps our head in a safe place. Hope keeps our head in a safe place. It's our refuge, folks. Hope is our refuge. It's what we hang on to when there's nothing else. You ever been there? You have nothing but hope. Doesn't matter how much believing you have or love. If you don't have hope, you ain't going to live long. I live in one of the most beautiful cities in our great country, Colorado Springs. And over 30,000 people move here every year. I hate the traffic. I love the city. You know, and it's not even bad traffic yet. Okay, yet I digress. You see, people flock here. Why? Well, people want to retire here. Why? Because it's so pretty. The weather's pretty darn good. It's close to skiing, it's close to hunting, it's close to the mountains. And in 4 hours you can be in the water, right? If you take an airplane. So it's a pretty cool place. I like it. I love it. It's 300 days of blue skies. 300 days of sunshine. I remember living in a city that had 300 days of rain. Drove my wife bonkers. You see, it's a great place to live. Maybe not the greatest, but it's the greatest place I've ever lived. Now, people flock here, they want to retire here, but it has one little problem. It has one of the highest suicide rates in the country. It just blows my mind. It just blows my mind. Now, maybe it's because there's 5 military bases around here, you see, which would add to those numbers. But all that, in other words, you'll get the point in a minute here. You see, experts are perplexed as to why. High schools are traumatized when their kids off themselves. Families are destroyed. Marriages break up. Fingers are pointed. You see, life is harder without hope, folks. Life is impossible without hope. You got to have something to look toward. Got to have something bigger than your own life, or what's the point? If people are taught that the second you die you're in a better place, then why live? Right? I mean, that positive thinking stuff can also get you killed. The point here is to live in this life with the head that you got, but it's protected with a helmet that we call hope. Hope is something that helps you keep your head together. It keeps you going when you feel like stopping. It keeps our brain from getting beat down by the constant barrages of this world. And you all know what I'm talking about. You all know it. We're not talking about wishful thinking when we talk about hope. It's not, I really hope that I get that job. Well, you're not going to. Not with that attitude. You see, I really hope those bullies stop picking on me. They're not going to stop picking on you unless you do something, unless you start acting, take some believing action. But you can deal with it better if you have hope. I'm going to be out of high school in a couple of years. Right? I've heard kids say that. I say, how do you keep a good attitude when you get picked on like that? Hey, I know I'm only here for another year. I can do anything for a year. You think that kid has hope? Yeah! Because they know, somebody told them that college is not like high school. Right? Usually places you work with adults aren't like that. Sometimes they are, but not usually. See, hope, don't use hope to cover your insecurities. Don't use that word. It's too big of a word. It's a small word. It's a 4-letter word, but it's huge. It fills this room. It fills a life. It saves a life. If you really hope you're going to get a job, you know what that means? You're going to get that job. You got the job. You're just waiting for the time it's going to happen. Hope is actually step one of believing, and I mentioned that earlier. You can't believe unless you have hope. Just read Hebrews 11:1 and you'll see what I'm talking about. That I think it's the Amplified says it's the title deed of things, hoped for. The evidence are yours before they're seen. It's pretty cool. Hebrews 11:1, I'm not going to read that, but hope is the galvanizing force that motivates us to keep believing, to keep pushing, to keep trying, to keep going, to keep living, no matter how bad things seem to get. That's hope. Hope is light at the end of the tunnel. Hope eliminates brain-crushing fear. Hope is the viral ingredient to all goal setting. Hope is the glue that binds dreams to our goals. When hope is lost, we get tossed. When hope is found, we abound. You see, sometimes all we have is hope. Tertullian said, hope is patience with the lamp lit. An Italian proverb is, hope is the last thing ever lost. When you lose hope, you're lost. You drift. You know, that one verse talks about not being blown about by the winds of the world or whatever that is in Ephesians, you know. Yeah. Don't be blown about like a child on a raft, like a baby on a raft. Yeah. Don't be blown around. That's hope. Hope, that's your anchor, folks. Hope keeps your head together. Now is the final use of the three words faith, hope, and love. You see, that was the second one, that last one. Hope protects our hearts while, I should say that in that section we saw how love welded to faith protects our hearts, while hope alone is what protects our minds. You know, love and faith, love and believing protects your heart, the seat of your life, who you are, your soul. But it's hope that protects your mind. And your mind controls your body. You see? So that was the second use of hope, love, and faith. Now the third and final use of these three words, faith, hope, and love, is 1 Corinthians 13:13 from the Message. But for right now, until that completeness, we have three things to do to lead us toward that consummation. Trust in God, that's faith. Hope unswervingly, and love extravagantly. And the best of the three is love. Or like in King James, love never fails. Last of all, we have faith, hope, love, and the greatest of these is love. You know, Corinthians is written a few years after Thessalonians. It's about 57 AD. Corinthians is written during a time when the believers are beginning to lose faith, lose hope, and were beginning to hate on each other. They weren't enjoying each other anymore. And you think, well, that never happened in Acts. Yes, it did. It did too. You know, it did. You see, this time period began the decline of the first century church. And that's why Paul set up these gems for us in Corinthians 13. Now, in verse 13 of 13. You see, and now abideth faith, hope, charity, these three, but the greatest of these is charity. Charity is agape, the love of God. You see, or love, that unconditional, that one-way love that I'm talking about. The love that doesn't need to be reciprocated. In the context of each and every believer walking with the power of the Holy Spirit, which is what Corinthians is, right here. Chapter 12, manifestations. Chapter 13, love. Chapter 14, manifestations. It's a sandwich. It's a walk by the Spirit sandwich. And love is the main ingredient. You see? I mean, so love is that diamond set on an engagement ring that's sculpted from hope and believing. If you could melt down the entire Bible and pour off the slag, the misunderstandings, the fluff, all that's going to be left will be love. In fact, God is love, if you boil God down. In fact, that's what He calls Himself, right? Love. You see, God is spirit. So love and spirit must be the same thing. And these are the final topics of the triple threat trifecta. Love in all its glory, love in all its fullest conceivable form, the love that it takes to walk by the Spirit when you feel like walking away is highlighted in chapter 13 of 1 Corinthians, verse 13. You see, now verse 4 through 8, it tells us it says that love is patient, love is kind, love isn't envious, love doesn't boast, brag, or strut about. There's no arrogance in love. It's never rude, crude, or indecent. It's not self-absorbed. Love isn't easily upset. Love doesn't tally wrongs or celebrate injustice. But truth, yes, truth, is love's delight. Love puts up with anything and everything that comes along. It trusts, hopes, and endures no matter what. Love will never become obsolete. Or translated, love never fails. It's never driven off course is another translation. Love can never be driven off course. It never drops out is another version. It'll never lose is another. It never becomes ineffective. Love always works. So what will always work in your life when nothing else is working? Love. The final point of the triple threat trifecta faith, hope, and love is that we need faith to keep our hearts strong. We need hope to keep our life long. And we need love because it will never fail. When you master the ability to walk in love, believe in, and hope, you too become a triple threat. As you integrate faith, hope, and love into your repertoire of skills, you will be unstoppable in life, business, and relationships. Plus, you're going to be pretty cool to be around, like I said earlier. So today we saw how each of us should strive to be a triple threat to all that's wrong in this world and a triple blessing to all that's right. Today we put on faith, love, and hope. Our triple threat trifecta is faith, hope, and love. God bless you.
Very cool.